Internally displaced girls and boys are traumatized, they are not going to school, and are resorting to begging or looking for odd jobs in exchange for food. We have heard reports of girls engaging in survival sex. The other half of the new IDPs live with host families in Goma, which often do not have the resources to support them. Just over 2 weeks ago, the Danish Refugee Council's field teams spoke to nearly 400 IDPs across 11 informal sites. 96% of people do not feel safe. One person told us, and I quote, "There's nowhere to go. The only solution is to stay in the warehouse and wait to die." DRC knows of widespread looting, shootings at night, and arbitrary arrests, many of whom are wrongly accused of being affiliated with armed groups. There are also reports of boys and men being forced into join armed groups. The presence of armed group members in and around Goma, as well as throughout North Kivu, is further terrorizing those displaced. One person told us that they wake each morning to find new dead bodies on the streets where they are staying, and it's never clear who the perpetrators are. Every step is fraught with danger, as the surrounding area of Goma is extensively contaminated by unexploded ordnances, which is yet another risk to those forcibly displaced that seek safety. Sexual violence is rampant. The Danish Refugee Council provides individual case management in informal sites in and around Goma to individuals who have experienced human rights violations. Since the surge in violence in late January, 98% of these cases have been for rape, including girls younger than 5 years of age. Every single child case management involved rape, further underscoring the extreme risks faced by girls and boys in this conflict. As horrifying as these figures are, we know these are a fraction of the actual number, as most cases go unreported due to fear of retaliation, stigma, and lack of access to specialized services. The humanitarian response is under extreme pressure. Some humanitarian organizations fear retaliation for providing aid in areas not controlled by the government, or are unsure whether they are legally still able to operate there. We lack fuel, cash, and supplies due to looting and the closure of Goma Airport, which is normally a strategic humanitarian hub in eastern Congo. The situation is further complicated by political instability, as local administrative offices which humanitarian organizations engage with are no longer under the control of the Congolese government. This requires navigating new requirements and renegotiating safe access. Banks in Goma are still closed, leading to a lack of cash and creating an environment where mobile money agents are exploiting the situation by arbitrarily dictating their own rates. The sudden and drastic funding cuts in humanitarian aid to DR Congo announced earlier this year as part of broader cuts have further significantly curtailed the ability of organizations to respond to the worsening humanitarian situation across the country. We must not forget that the situation in the northern province of Ituri also remains critical, with limited presence of humanitarian NGOs there. The Danish Refugee Council anticipates that the displacement crisis in DR Congo will only worsen. Our AI-driven forecasting tool, developed alongside IBM, anticipates that DR Congo will be one of the biggest displacement hotspots for the year ahead. Since the escalation of violence in January, 70,000 refugees have arrived in Burundi. This influx is overwhelming the existing transit centers and refugee camps in Burundi, which were already at full capacity. In late February, we conducted a rapid needs assessment along the border between DR Congo and Burundi, which highlighted the urgent need for emergency assistance. Congolese from Goma also fled to Uganda since January. The regional impact will only increase if the humanitarian needs are not addressed within Eastern Congo and the conflict does not end. The Danish Refugee Council calls on members of the Security Council and the international community to, firstly, use all available avenues to guarantee the safe passage and protection of displaced populations in and around Goma. This includes calling for an end to the forced return of displaced people to unsafe areas and ensuring that all returns are voluntary, safe, and dignified. Secondly, call for the unimpeded humanitarian access to displaced populations, including in non-government controlled areas, and for the protection of civilians to be prioritized in all response efforts. Thirdly, urge all parties to find peaceful means to end the conflict, as there are no military solutions to end this violence. And fourthly, support local peace-building efforts to rebuild trust and social cohesion amongst local communities that have been torn apart by years of war. When conditions improve and allow for displaced people to voluntarily and safely begin to return to their villages, it will be critical to help them rebuild their lives. For nearly all of the IDPs the Danish Refugee Council recently interviewed, only peace will make them feel safer. I want to leave you with the word of one of the IDPs we just spoke to, and who said, "We want to go home where we'll be safe, where we can farm our lands and find enough food to eat." Thank you.
I thank Ms. Slente for her briefing. I'll now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to thank the Special Representative of the Secretary-General, Ms. Bintou Keita, for her briefing, but particularly for her action and for the work of MONUSCO in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I thank the Secretary-General of the Danish Refugee Council, Ms. Charlotte Slente, for her briefing, which was incredibly human and tangible. Through these statements, we have taken stock of the serious nature of the security and humanitarian situation that continues to weigh on the people of North and South Kivu. These situations are worsened by the offensive launched by M23 with the support and participation of the Rwandan Defense Forces. Once again, in 3 decades of conflict, the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo is in the grips of violence perpetrated by armed groups, as well as chronic instability and the plundering of natural resources. This situation must call us to action. 1 month after the adoption of Resolution 2773, it is now incumbent upon this Council to remain involved in terms of promoting peace and security in the DRC and in the region as a whole. The Security Council spoke out in unambiguous terms to demand an immediate cessation of hostilities. Resolution 2773 called upon all parties to establish an effective, unconditional and immediate ceasefire. Through this text, the Security Council called unanimously for the immediate withdrawal of the RDF from the Congolese territory. The resolution also recalls the need to comply with international humanitarian law and to guarantee comprehensive, safe and unfettered humanitarian access, beginning with the reopening of the Goma airport. These appeals are just as vital today as they were before. Urgent progress must be seen with the implementation of Resolution 2773. Daily clashes are seen time and time again on the front lines. There are acts of violence committed against civilians, violations of human rights, and sexual violence continues to increase exponentially. There is a risk of conflagration in the region of the Great Lakes. The Council will not simply be able to limit itself to dealing with the current situation. Consequently, the upholding of the ceasefire is a major priority. France supports efforts to this end, whether we be talking about appeals for the ceasefire heard after the meeting in Doha on 18th of March, or in the midst of the SADC-EAC regional process. The ceasefire must be implemented so that clashes cease and stop being a burden on the people in the East DRC. Dialogue initiatives must continue to achieve tangible and visible progress towards the end of the cessation of hostilities. Here, regional mediation processes have a key role to play in creating a solution to this conflict, which we need to see. France has supported the Luanda and Nairobi processes and will continue to support all regional efforts, making it possible to achieve a sustainable solution to the conflict, including the EAC SADC process. We support the coordination of these initiatives with UN action. The civil society and women must also be involved. I hail the engagement of Angola and their president, João Lourenço. He's worked tirelessly to promote dialogue and establish tangible parameters for a negotiated solution in order to see the complete withdrawal of Rwandan forces and the neutralization of the FDLR by the DRC. This must continue through SADC. We must build on these gains. I here hail the important role of MONUSCO. MONUSCO's role is evolving in an increasingly worsening environment. Its protection of civilians mandate must be protected. Across its theatre of operation, MONUSCO has the capacity to monitor the ceasefire once such an agreement has been reached. Pressure against MONUSCO must cease to this end. Attacks against blue helmets, which could be liable to constitute war crimes, cannot be accepted. The same thing can be said for restrictions placed on MONUSCO's freedom of movement or the discharging of its mandate. Madam President, the resolution of the Great Lakes conflict means that all parties must be involved in good faith, bolstered by the conviction that there is no military solution. A solution also required the continued involvement of this Council, closely connected with regional efforts. We support the Council's work in order to restore the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC and promote stability across the region as well as peace. We fully support MONUSCO and its head, Bintou Keita. I thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the members of the A3+, namely Algeria, Guyana, Somalia, and my country, Sierra Leone. We thank Ms. Bintou Keita, Special Representative of the Secretary General in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Head of the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the DRC, for our briefing and for presenting the Secretary General's quarterly report on the situation in the DRC. We also thank Ms. Charlotte Slente, Secretary General, Danish Refugee Council, for our contribution. We welcome the participation of His Excellency Olivier Ndugai, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Rwanda, and the representatives of the DRC, Angola, and Burundi in today's meeting. Madam President, the A3+ extends sincere appreciation to the men and women of MONUSCO for their dedicated service. They continue to demonstrate an unwavering commitment to protecting the lives of the Congolese people, despite the challenges and risks, particularly over this quarter. In the context of the ongoing hostilities, we're encouraged by recent improvements in security and humanitarian access that have allowed greater freedom of movement in the East. It is reassuring that evacuated MONUSCO personnel have been able to return to Goma, a positive sign of stabilization in that area. These developments give hope that MONUSCO will be able to carry out the critical mandate entrusted to it by this Council. We affirm our full support for MONUSCO's mandate and operations. As we look ahead, discussions about MONUSCO's activities, including plans for its future role, must be conducted in consultation with the DRC government and reflect the priorities of the Congolese people. National ownership and partnership are essential for the successful implementation of the mission's mandate. We also acknowledge the invaluable contributions of the regional mechanisms to security efforts in Eastern DRC. In this regard, the A3+ deeply appreciates the sacrifice and service of the Southern African Development Community Mission in the DRC, SAMI-DRC, which has now concluded its mandate. We thank the SADC member states that contributed troops and resources to this operation, and we commend their continued political engagement alongside the East African community in seeking a viable solution to the conflict in Eastern DRC. Madam President, the A3+ remains profoundly concerned about the dire humanitarian situation in Eastern DRC. The conflict continues to inflict a severe toll on the Congolese people. It has impacted every sector of society, exacerbating economic hardship, displacing millions, and upending entire communities. Children are out of school, women and girls are enduring increased conflict-related sexual violence, compounded by the lack of adequate support systems for survivors. The overall situation is nothing short of catastrophic. We again reiterate our urgent call for an immediate cessation of hostilities across Eastern DRC. There is no justification for the continuation of this devastating conflict. Every additional day of fighting deepens the suffering and despair of the population. We must act now to silence the guns and halt the bloodshed. The improved stability in the city of Goma is a window of calm that provides a crucial opportunity for humanitarian organizations to deliver life-saving assistance to those in need. We urge all aid agencies to seize this opportunity to reach vulnerable populations, and we call on all parties to ensure rapid, safe, and unhindered access for humanitarian operations. The A3+ welcomes recent steps towards de-escalation. In particular, we note the ceasefire announcement by the M23 AFC, including its commitment to withdraw from areas such as Walikale. We urge M23 AFC to fully honor these pledges and demonstrate restraint on the ground. All armed groups must end the violence immediately and uphold their ceasefire commitment. We call on this Council and the international community to support these efforts to ensure they lead to tangible peace. The A3+ stresses further that all parallel administrations set up in the territory of the DRC must be dismantled, and the AFC M23 must relinquish control over all territory seized. We strongly endorse the political process outlined in UN Security Council Resolution 2773, which incorporates the regional perspective on political dialogue. Resolution 2773, adopted unanimously, will affirm the DRC's sovereignty and territorial integrity, demanded an immediate and unconditional ceasefire by all armed groups, called for the withdrawal of any external support to these groups, and urged the resumption of dialogue under existing regional mechanisms. The A3+ calls for the swift and full implementation of this resolution by all concerned parties. Its message is clear, and the A3+ reiterates that message. There is no military solution to this conflict. Sustainable peace in the DRC will only be achieved through inclusive dialogue and African-led solutions. In this respect, we commend the concerted diplomatic efforts of African leaders and regional organizations to resolve the conflict. We pay tribute to His Excellency, President João Manuel Gonçalves Lorenzo of Angola, who has tirelessly mediated between the DRC and Rwanda in the spirit of African-led solutions to African challenges. We also recognize the important facilitating role of former President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya in the EAC-led Nairobi process. These efforts have laid critical groundwork for peace. We welcome the recent decision by the regional leaders at the joint EAC-SADC summit on 24 March 2025 to harmonize the Luanda and Nairobi peace processes. This unified approach is critical and built upon the foundation laid by the facilitators of the Luanda and Nairobi processes. Our shared goal is to reach a lasting settlement that addresses the root causes of the conflict, meets the aspirations of the Congolese people, and considers the legitimate regional security concerns. We note that the African Union Peace and Security Council, at its February 2025 summit meeting, also underscored the need for a coordinated response to the crisis and endorsed these regional initiatives. The EAC and SADC have shown commendable unity by adopting a joint roadmap to peace and appointing a high-level panel of facilitators comprised of eminent former African heads of state to guide the peace process. The A3+ welcomes the establishment of this panel and urges all stakeholders to cooperate fully with the facilitators in the timely implementation of the roadmap. We also urge the full, equal, and meaningful involvement of women in the peace process. The Security Council must do its part to reinforce this African-led peace effort. We urge the Council to remain engaged and to use all available tools to support the regional roadmap, including backing the joint peace process and the facilitator panel, and ensuring that the UN's effort, including those of MONUSCO, complement the regional strategy. Madam President, the A3+ gratefully acknowledges the support from international partners to the DRC in the form of humanitarian aid, development assistance, and diplomatic engagement. At the same time, we stress that all external effort must be closely coordinated with the Congolese authorities and aligned with the region's peace initiatives. We welcome the outcome of the trilateral meeting hosted by the State of Qatar in Doha on 18 March 2025, which brought together His Excellency President Felix Tshisekedi and His Excellency President Paul Kagame. In light of commitment made by both leaders in Doha to remain fully engaged in the joint Luanda and Nairobi process, the A3+ stresses that all processes for peace and security in DRC should align with this commitment with the African-led process. The presence of external forces risks exacerbating the situation and undermining ongoing effort. We therefore call on all actors to respect the DRC's sovereignty. In line with Resolution 2773, all uninvited foreign forces should withdraw from Congolese territory. Neighboring countries must ensure that they are not providing support or safe haven to any armed group. In closing, Madam President, the A3+ reiterates its unwavering commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, peace, and stability of the DRC. We commend the parties for their continued engagement and willingness to pursue dialogue in search of a peaceful resolution. These are encouraging steps towards rebuilding trust and security in the country. The A3+ calls on the Security Council and the international community at large to provide steadfast and meaningful support to the DRC. This means not only bolstering MONUSCO's effort on the ground, but also fully backing the ongoing regional political initiatives that offer the best hope for durable peace. We must all remain actively seized of the matter and ready to assist as needed. The people of the Eastern DRC have suffered for too long. They are looking to us, in Africa and around the world, to help end their ordeal. We must not fail them. I thank you.